There are no new stories in Hollywood. We've all heard this, right? Or at least some variation. Now, lately, it would seem every movie coming out is a remake or a reboot or a variation of. I mean, doesn't it? When it happens, people, they just get angry. How dare they take a beloved, sometimes, property and completely destroy it by remaking it? Well, guys, I'm here to discuss a few things related to remakes. The first thing is, this isn't a new trend. Remakes have been happening all throughout filmmaking history, and we're also going to chat about why remakes happen and why they aren't a bad thing, even when they're done poorly. We'll finish out by giving examples of a few remakes people seem to like better than the originals, and ones people absolutely despised, and why they worked or didn't work. Hey guys, I'm Jason Emmett, and this is the Movie Mix Deep Dive. So the list of films that have been remade is extensive. We're not going to be going into all of them because we can't, but we're going to highlight a few over the last, 100 plus years of cinema. Now, most consider the date of December 28, 1895, as the official birth of modern cinema. This is when the Lumiere brothers held the first public screening of a motion picture. The Lumiere brothers had a film called Playing Cards, which was remade by director George Méliès in 1896, not even a full year after the original. The same thing happened to The Great Train Robbery, which was first released in 1903. In 1904, there was a virtual shot-for-shot remake of The Great Train Robbery. 1908 saw The Count of Monte Cristo, which would be remade in 1913, 1918, 1922, 29, 34, and almost every year after that, all the way up until there was just one that came out in 2024. Look, guys, when I say there are a lot of remakes and they have been happening since the very beginning of motion pictures, I mean there are a lot of remakes, and it's been happening since the very beginning of motion pictures. And if I'm to be completely honest, a quick look at the timeline would actually suggest we see fewer remakes now than we did throughout the 20s all the way through the 60s. Now, all of this just sort of leads into why movies are remade in the first place. There are really several reasons, but one is because popular movies sell better. If a film comes out and people love it, they tend to want more, and for a film company, a proven story can be a safer bet. Film companies are looking to make money, and if it worked once, it will probably work again. So yes, financially, it just makes sense, and money is, well, it's always a factor. But money isn't the only factor. Some films are remade because they become culturally relevant again. 1996 gave us The Birdcage, a remake of the 1978 European film La Cage aux Folles. Now, we won't go too in-depth regarding foreign films and why they get remade, although we will talk about a few. But consider in 1996, the topic of a gay couple pretending to be straight, well, it sort of landed with the modern progressive culture at the time. A Star is Born has been remade twice, with each iteration moving the film into the present age, but still striking a chord with, the story, because the story was once again relevant. The point here is sometimes the tone of the story just finds its way back into popular culture, which means the movie has a better chance of resonating with its audience. And, well, again, previous hits are less risky. This can also sort of play into certain time periods coming in vogue. For example, if the 80s happen to be a hot commodity again, either due to Gen Xers living a nostalgia bug or Gen Z just trying to be hip, it sort of makes sense we might see 80s properties popping up again. That nostalgia thing, it can be fairly powerful, and for as much as I didn't care for Footloose in 1984, just not my thing, I was still drawn to watch the remake in 2011. Look, I watched RoboCop and Red Dawn too, and I pretty much knew they wouldn't be anywhere near as good as the first, but, what are you going to do? Not watch them? There are two other reasons we tend to see movies get remade. The first one, I'll mention a few remakes, and we'll see if you can figure out why this is, on your own. Dune. This most recent remake of the Frank Herbert novel was a huge hit with audiences, and most were actually glad they made it. Planet of the Apes, not the 2001 remake. We're going to talk about 2011 and Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Yes, they took a new direction with the story altogether, and it worked well, because if you look, these films, they're still going strong in the box office. How about King Kong, which landed in 1933? Then it was remade for, this reason we're going to talk about in 1976, and then for a similar reason in 2005. So, any guesses what this reason might be? Special effects. All of these films were remade, in part, due to advancements in special effects. Now, obviously, that isn't the only reason they were blessed with a new budget, cast, and story, but it is a huge component for many films to get the redo treatment. Hell, George Lucas pseudo-remade his own movies because of this very thing. So what do we call the Star Wars special editions? I mean, they're definitely redos. Maybe we just call them worse? Updating because of special effects is a trend I can actually get behind with a lot of different film series. It is great to compare and marvel over the advancements in technology, but it's also great to appreciate the ingenuity of the earlier films, which ties them all together, at least for me. The last reason we're really going to hit on here is also a fairly fair reason, especially if you consider all the previous reasons factored together. That reason is they own the rights. Just think about it. You're a company looking for a way to make money. You own the rights to, let's say, Back to the Future, a film series that earned close to $1 billion and has garnered millions in merchandise sales with a massive fan base. You need a good score, and you could spend money to buy this new script that's been pitched, take the chance, produce it, release it, and hope it'll turn a profit, or you can hire a couple of guys to retool that Back to the Future property you have sitting in there. Then you hire the next young guy to play Marty, and you roll the dice. Hell, with a remake like this, you have it all. You have the rights, you have the nostalgia, you have updated effects. It's a sure thing, right? Now, guys, I want you to know this would be a horrible idea, by the way, and in a moment we're going to talk about why certain remakes just don't work. Anyway, the point is sometimes films are remade simply because they already own the rights to a good story, so why buy something else? Now, to me, this is also often the worst reason for a film to be remade, even if it's one I kind of understand the most. I know it sounds weird, but follow me here. Okay, there is one more, remake group I suppose I should hit on, at least briefly, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, remakes of foreign films. For this, think The Ring, Old Boy, Let the Right One In. These spark a lot of feelings, and there seem to be two very distinctive groups, with a third, lesser group. There are those who hate it. They swear the original is always better and think the practice of remaking foreign films is an insult to the motion picture industry. Then there are those who hate foreign films. They refuse to watch them, and they want remakes of everything with a decent storyline so they can enjoy watching it in English, damn it. Now, I fall into the third group. I can enjoy and appreciate both. I prefer it to be in English simply because, I speak English, and it's easier for me to keep up with the story, but I can also watch the original dubbed or with subtitles as long as the story's good enough to hold my attention. Now, personally, I don't see these remakes as the sacrilege some do. I've watched both versions of plenty of films, Junon and The Grudge, for example. I prefer The Grudge. I liked Let Me In and Let the Right One In, but felt the original seemed to land just slightly better. I found both versions of Old Boy to feel pretty much the same to me. Again, this is just my opinion, and I know you guys have yours. And it's fine. It's okay. We're all allowed to have them, guys. I promise. So why did I say remakes aren't a bad thing? Well, this is really simple. It doesn't hurt anything. And they actually have the potential to help. Now, I'll preface this by saying I do understand the frustration when they remake a film you loved and that film, that remake, sucks. Trust me, I do. I mentioned RoboCop earlier. I even watched that damn movie a second time just hoping I would be wrong, but they just totally missed the mark. The remake of The Fog, I mean, seriously, it was so boring. But here's the thing. That happens to be an example of an awesome remake. I digress. Both of those new adaptations drove me back to watch the original. I also have older kids whom I introduced to the originals because we saw that the new films were coming out. If a remake comes out and it's good, well, then we win. If it's bad but draws attention to the original, well, we still sort of win. Basically, what I'm getting at is no matter how bad or good the new version might be, it doesn't detract from the original. In fact, quite often, both good or bad remakes tend to enhance the original. So I just jokingly mentioned The Thing. In my opinion, the 1982 John Carpenter film is one of the greatest horror films of all time. Again, just my opinion. Technically, it's a loose remake of the 1951 film The Thing from Another World, as is another awesome 80s horror film, 1986 The Fly, which was based off The Fly from 1958. Now, to me, these are pseudo-remakes. The basic groundwork is there, but the stories are drastically different and way better. Little Shop of Horrors kind of falls into this too, but that's a remake that was redone as a musical, so again, slightly different. We've had several films remade that people tend to agree are as good, if not better, than their predecessors. Scarface is one of them, as is Ocean's 11, although the original has a really cool vibe to it. How about Dawn of the Dead? Not necessarily better, but certainly as good, and that remake revitalized an entire industry. True Grit, that remake, it was fantastic. And how about The Departed, The Maltese Falcon, Sin of a Woman, Dread, The Blob, It? I think most of us are extremely pleased that most of these movies were made. The problem is, for every good remake, we seem to get a bad remake. 2017's Flatliners did just that for me. It flatlined. It was not creative and so very, very slow. The remake of Jacob's Ladder did sort of the same thing. Most hated the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Now, personally, I didn't hate it, but it definitely didn't land anywhere near where they wanted it to, and it just wasn't quite as good as the original. The Mummy from 2017. Sorry, Tom Cruise, even you couldn't save this train wreck. The Day the Earth Stood Still 2008. Great if you're looking to take a 2-hour nap, am I right? The Omen, Guess Who, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, all considered to be bad remakes. So why do some work and some not? I think there are a few reasons. Some are products of their time. Remember that Back to the Future analogy I made earlier? To me, it is a story that can't be just remade because the humor, the attitude, the storyline, they work better in 1985. Jump a mere decade later to 1995, and the world was a very different place. Here, a better example of this would be the recent remake of The Crow. Aside from having just a really bad script, trying to remake that story today was always going to fall flat because you're trying to capture a feeling, a vibe that just isn't current. The 94 Crow starring Brandon Lee was grungy and gritty, and it felt like a music video from that era. You can, and they should have, made a different Crow story with a more modern feel, but you cannot force pop culture to relate to something they just don't relate to. The Lost Boys. They're already talking about a redo of that one. I have no problem with a similar story with a new group set in modern day, but that story, the original story, it likely wouldn't land with the same punch because teens, culture, society, it's all different now. Another reason they don't always work is because someone thinks they have a better idea for a backstory, thus changing the core of what made it good in the first place. I'm looking at you, Michael Bay, and the way you tried to change my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You had a strong history, but you wanted to change it, and by doing so, you made the characters not as strong. You're allowed to change certain aspects, but you can't change the groundwork. You can't change the backstory. And then sometimes the remakes don't work just because the script isn't good. Like, seriously, sometimes bad writing is just bad writing. Anyway, guys, there you have it. A brief look at remakes, why they happen, and why we should actually learn to embrace them instead of just flat out hating them. For real, though, all of us have at least one remake we prefer over the original. And I would say overall, remakes aren't so bad. So try to relax a little bit next time you hear a remake is coming out. With all that being said, I would love to hear a little feedback. What's a remake you love? What's one you just can't stand? And what's a movie you guys think they should remake today? Drop it in the comments, like this video, share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for all your geek movie goodness. As always, this is the Movie Mix Deep Dive. I've been your host, Jason Emmett, and you guys, stay awesome.